Welcome everyone, this is Vintage Story, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Stone Bake Oven mod. You can see one of these behind me as we speak, but this mod is very efficient and versatile. Not only can you make as many baking surfaces as you want with this with some very simple materials, it also will accept any kind of fuel that you want to use, whether it's firewood, peat, or charcoal. So we're going to take a look at everything we need to build one of these, and of course we're going to go through the process of constructing a stone bake oven ourselves. And if you're interested in downloading this, I will have the link to the mod page below, and of course check out all my other tutorial videos, and I got a ton of Vintage Story content for you, so those links are all down there too. Now let's get into the Stone Bake Oven mod. Okay, we're taking a look at the tools and materials, but before we jump into that, I just want to point out that the handbook actually has a really great guide for the Stone Bake Oven, so big shout out to the mod author for laying this out really clearly, easy to read and understand, and relatively short and succinct too. And there's even hyperlinks here to the exact recipes that we'll be using, so again, if you forget any of this info, double check the handbook and the guide. It's really helpful. But now we're going to be looking at the tools, which we will use, the iron hammer and the chisel. That's it for tools. Those are the only two we'll require. Now in terms of the materials, we're going to need fireclay, and yes, it does have to be fireclay. The other two varieties won't work for these recipes. In addition, we're going to need some plates, and these two have to be copper. You can't use bronze or iron. The recipes call specifically for copper plates. And after that, you've got your choice of what kind of stone you want to use. I'm using granite just because it's the most common in my area, but if you want some nice blue ovens, use some andesite. It's really up to you, whatever variety. Also, the type is optional. If you want to go with a cobblestone look like I've got, do that. You can also whip up some ashlar oven pieces too, but now that we've looked at the tools and materials, it's very simple, doesn't introduce anything new, so let's check out the actual recipes. Okay, and we're going to take a look at the recipes now for this oven. There are 3 different types of blocks that we're going to need to construct a working oven. The first one we're going to talk about is the heat source itself. So let's click on this and we'll just go to one of the random ones. Here we see the recipe, so we'll set this up. And of course, like I said, it requires fireclay and it has to be copper plates. Now once you've got that, you can either do an ashlar variety, you can even go with the plain one, very nice. And let's see, does cobblestone work too? Yes, it does. How about some polished? Nope, not the polished. So you've got an option there, but once you've got your heating source, you can start to worry about the others. Now again, you only need one of these. The guide itself, if you read this, actually tells you that unless you're cooking on like a ridiculous scale, you really only need one heating source. So if you're just going to do 6 to 8 different surfaces, just make the one. Don't worry about beefing it up or anything like that. Now let's look at the next block that we're going to be making, which will be the baking space itself. And we'll just grab one of these recipes. So fairly simple to the other one. This one actually does require polished to go on top, so this spot right here has to be occupied by a polished block. But other than that, you've got your option between an ashlar baking surface, or you can go with the cobblestone. Let's put the plain in there. You can even go with the plain cooking surface. Very nice. And you can see I've got 6 baking surfaces in front of me here that are cobblestone. But once you've got this, it's on to what is arguably the more difficult of the 3. So let's go back and we're going to take a look now at the heat distribution. These blocks have a couple of different varieties. So there's a T-junction, there's a corner, there's an end cap, and essentially these are the blocks that are going to distribute the heat from the main source and pump it out into the baking surface itself. As you can kind of see, don't worry, we're going to build one of these together. And like I say, this is probably the more confusing of the parts, but once you've mastered this, it's really a simple thing to put together. So let's step outside where we've got a little bit more building space, and we're going to put together one of these ovens. All right, let's put together our oven. And the first block we're going to place is the heat source itself. And remember, this is going to occupy the very center of the oven, so just keep that in mind when you're doing your layout in your kitchen. Now, first thing I want to call your attention to are these holes on either side. The back is solid, and this top piece right here is just for looks. This right here doesn't do anything, but these holes on the side is where the heat from the fire is going to go through, and those are going to enter the heat distribution blocks, which is what we're going to place next. Now, again, this is kind of the most confusing part, but it's really not that bad. Once you've mastered these blocks, everything else is simple. There are 3 different kinds of heat distribution blocks. Here we've got a T-junction, so you can see that this block has 3 sides that are open for the heat to travel through, and the back is solid. And then over here, this is the normal heat distribution. This one has 2 solid facings and then 2 open facings, so it's just like a little tunnel that the heat can go straight through. And then we've also got the corner piece, and the corner has 2 openings side by side and then 2 closed pieces, and this is essentially the block that we're going to end or cap off the oven with. But don't worry, we're going to go through this together right now and place these heat distribution sources onto the heating element itself. All right, so the first blocks we're going to place are the T-junctions, and the reason for that, and you can see it very clearly when I lay out the baking surfaces. So I'm going to have my baking surfaces right here in the front, which means we're going to need T-junctions because it needs to lead off of this, continue out this direction because I want to have 4 total, but it also needs to link up with this. So let's go ahead and just remove these so we can actually see the holes on the T-junction as we're placing those. So we've got our T-junction. We're going to slap those down. Now let's take a look. Oh, okay. So nope, this is not correct here. You can see that this would cause, the solid piece is facing the heat source, so this would not work. The heat is not going to flow through this here. So what we're going to have to do is stand in a different position and place these so that they will face the correct way. So we've got our T-junction. I'm going to stand in the rear and place these. Let's see, does that do the trick? No, it doesn't. So we're going to have to try that again from a different position. And once we've got our T-junction here, we'll stand at this side. Nope, not yet. Okay, so this one is actually now correct. You can see we've got the solid back here, and if we duck down, yep, the hole goes straight through to the heating element, and then it also opens up to the face so that that's going to heat up this surface. So again, you kind of got to dance around a little bit, but I think what we want to do is literally stand up here. And did that do the trick? Yes, it did. Okay, so that is now perfect. We can go ahead and place that, the baking surface. So this right here would be functional. You would probably want to put some solid blocks to cap those off. But since we want to have 4 baking surfaces, now I'm going to use some of these corner blocks. You can see for this particular build, I'm not actually using just the regular heat distribution blocks at all. It's just going to be a couple of T-junctions and then a couple of corner pieces. So let's go through and place these corners and see if we can actually get these on here the first time around. No. Okay, that one's not right. Not to worry, not to worry. Let's try over here. Nope, not quite. Okay, let me position these correctly. Okay, so in order to place these corners, for this one, I want to stand and look down. There we go. Yep, perfect. So we've got solid facings on the back and on the end, and you can see that it opens up so that I can place my other baking surface right there. Perfect. And for the final corner piece, I believe we want to stand right in front. Yep, so that surface is solid, and now the opening is facing the baking surface itself. There we go. So we've got a nice little 4-surface oven set up and ready to go. This is perfect. This is working, and let's go bake something on it. one of the best parts about this mod is just how versatile it is. We've already seen that you can build many different baking surfaces on, as many as you want pretty much, but it will also accept any kind of fuel that you have too. So unlike the standard fireclay ovens in the vanilla game, which only take firewood, this will also accept coal or charcoal, and it will take peat as well. So you just toss that in there and it's going to be much more efficient too. Now, once you've got the heating source filled up, we'll of course light it up with our torch just like you would normally, and you'll start to see the temperature rise in the tooltip. Very good. Now the temperature of the surfaces will start to rise as that heat is distributed. There we go. We can start to see the smoke particles in the back pop up. There we go. And we see the temperature on this baking surface has now reached 300 degrees C. And as I mentioned earlier, the farther you get from the heating surface, the less efficient it is, but with only 3 blocks, it's not going to be that noticeable. So it just takes a few extra moments for these end pieces to heat up. But boom, there we go. So all of the baking surfaces are now up to temperature, and we can add our raw dough, and that will start to cook. Now it's important to note that these ovens will accept anything that the standard fireclay oven, so you can cook pies, bread, even meat in these, and modded recipes will work too. So again, anything that the fireclay oven accepts, these will also accept. So very versatile once again. And you can see we've got a progress percentage up there. It even shows the temperature, and of course we can char bread on these too if we so choose, just by leaving them up there. But of course that's not necessary. It's just however long you want to keep a shelf life for. But that does it for a preview and a look at the stone bake oven, guys. I'm going to leave the rest of it up for you to experiment with and try out for yourself. But I hope this video has helped you a little bit in exploring and discovering what I've considered to be a really great and essential mod. This is going to be one you'll see in all of my future playthroughs for sure. But really appreciate you guys stopping by, and of course make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more vintage story content, and I will see you guys on the next one.